The sky is the limit for these wide receivers. We're going to go through some really high ceiling players, especially in best ball leagues, what we think of them at their current price and if you should be drafting them. So stay tuned for that. Do us a huge favor before we get started. Drop some love. Make sure you like the video and make sure you're also subscribed. We are coming out with fantasy content all year round. We're going to help you get through your fantasy seasons and your drafts. So make sure you are subscribed. And also, if you want a video review of your fantasy team, make sure you head over to flockfantasy.com/domain. When you use our code, we will give you that team review video, and you'll also get in a listener league with us. You'll get access to rankings, articles, Discord, everything you can imagine. So, like I said, make sure you're heading over to flockfantasy.com/domain to get all of our exclusive content. And like I said today, these wide receivers, we may be in on them, we may be out on them, but we are going to acknowledge that they have some of the highest ceiling in fantasy football in best ball drafts. We're going to tell you why, and then we're going to tell you what we think of their current price. And the first guy on this list is going to be Jaylen Waddle.
Yeah, so with Jaylen Waddle, this guy, last season we were more down on him than the consensus in fantasy, and we were wrong. We thought he wasn't going to produce as high as he did because he literally doubled his yards per target, his yards per reception, and produced with less passing volume, which was absolutely incredible. And it was because Tyreek Hill was helping him open the field up so much. But as a rookie, Waddle had a 25% target share and averaged 8.9 targets per game. And last season, like we said, his targets per game goes down to 6.8 and his target share drops to 21.6%. What do you expect his production to drop? No, it went up. He was wide receiver 8 last season. His efficiency through the roof. He was 4th in yards per route run and 8th in yards per team pass attempt, 1st in yards per target, and 1st in yards per reception. So Waddle at wide receiver 11 on Underdog is, we would say, maybe a little bit pricey, but with a 35% wide receiver 1 rate last year and the ability to dominate in both efficiency and volume, Waddle is definitely a candidate to be a top 5, to have a top 5 season. And if for some reason Tyreek Hill was out of the picture for some part of the season, maybe a suspension, we're not going to really account for that in his value. And I honestly don't think that Tyreek Hill is really going to be impacted in fantasy this season because of the off the field issues. But again, I mean, the upside with Waddle is undeniable. And when you're talking Underdog, when you're talking best ball, you want to see those high upside weeks where, I mean, you can pull up Waddle's game log last year. He had some of the worst games, like 5 points in a game, 1 point in a game, and other times he was putting up 40. And that's what you want to see in best ball. That's what's going to win you games. That's what's going to win you championships. That's what's going to win you money. So we are, I think from a price perspective, we are okay with Waddle's current ADP. I kind of wonder what you guys think about this because I go back and forth from an ADP perspective, seeing where Waddle's going, because a lot of times, I mean, when you're talking second round, we've talked about our wide receiver strategy before where you should take wide receiver in the first round and go running back the second. Well, Waddle's going in the second. If Waddle falls to you in the second round, is he a guy that you're taking a shot on consistently or even maybe just as a 50-50 running back or Waddle?
I guess it would depend. I mean, if he's falling to the late second, then maybe. But like in the early second, you're still getting Devontae Adams there, who's going, I think, as the wide receiver 10.
Yeah.
You still can get Jonathan Taylor. You still can get Saquon Barkley. So again, with our strategy this year in best ball leagues, I like taking that running back there. However, with Jaylen Waddle, again, with the boom bust potential that he has, those are the kind of guys you look for in best ball. Again, it's less about where he's going from like a wide receiver perspective, because do I think he finishes as wide receiver 11 or higher? Absolutely, I do.
Yeah.
But again, like you said, I'm leaning running back in the second round. So I think you should definitely be doing some builds where you're taking Waddle in the second round. And it actually works out really nice if you take Kelsey or Eckler or CMC in the first round, then taking Waddle on the other way around is a really good pick, actually.
That's true.
So that's kind of how
that's a good way to look at it.
That's kind of how I'm thinking of it. Now, that being said, I can't say I have a lot of Jaylen Waddle, honestly.
No.
And so, and I think you kind of explain why. But
and the reason for that in my eyes is as simple as I'd rather take the running back 4 or 5 sometimes than the wide receiver 11 or 12.
Especially when it comes to the scarcity of the position at running back. I mean, the high producing running back ones are debatably way more valuable than the ones that are producing at a top 16 to 20 level
Yeah,
at
sure.
wide receiver. So
Yeah, absolutely. All right, you've got the next guy on this list.
Next, we have Christian Watson, and we understand we haven't been the biggest supporters of Christian Watson. So we want to recognize that a Christian Watson bet could have insane payoff. I mean, drafting him at wide receiver 21,
Fourth round.
Yeah, in the fourth round.
Yeah.
He has absolutely shown ability to be a top tier deep threat in the league. He had a 40% wide receiver 1 rate over his last 10 games last season. Really, after he came back from that injury, he averaged 14.4 points per game in PPR. And I get when we're talking about PPR leagues, we're not usually discussing best ball leagues, but Christian Watson could this next year, he could get better. We often expect those rookie wide receivers to improve from their rookie to their sophomore seasons. And we're hoping that he gets better. The thing we're looking at and why his price is this low is they brought in Luke Musgrave in the second round. They brought in Jaden Reed in the second round. And on top of that, Jordan Love is essentially a rookie QB. And people get on to us for saying that, but he's had
First year as a starter.
It's his first year as a starter. He's not going to be someone who just comes out, in our opinion, and just dominates. So Christian Watson, is he worth it here? Well, he had an 18.8 touchdown rate last year, which is incredibly high. That's going to come down. But, like we said, he was 4th in total touchdowns. He was 12th in yards per route run. He was 1st in fantasy points per target. So he's someone who can turn limited volume into a lot of production. Is he someone I'm comfortable with? Personally, if I'm getting him as wide receiver 21, I'm understanding that it's a high-risk draft and it's a high-risk choice, but I'm fine with it there.
I also have been taking more of Christian Watson recently, like explicitly for the reasons that you named. I love the boom potential with Christian Watson. I do think that he can, him especially being a guy that also can get end rounds and take him to the house. There you saw the big game production from him last year.
Yeah.
And so he's very similar to Waddle in that aspect. Hasn't been consistent though, like Waddle is. That's why he's going as the wide receiver 21. But when you consider his talent, when you consider the situation he's in, he has the situation to boom if it's there for him. So
I've definitely been taking some shares of Christian Watson as well, and it just make sure that you're aware, make sure that you understand who you're passing up on in that range though, because there are plenty of true proven wide receiver ones that get significant target volume on a consistent weekly basis, like Amari Cooper, like Deebo Samuel, even you could even say Terry McLaurin, DeAndre Hopkins, who's going to the Titans now, a true wide receiver 1 who's going to get heavy target volume as well. Those are just the guys that you've got to be willing to pass up on, who they're going to be more consistent maybe, and some of them still have as much upside as Christian Watson does on a game-to-game basis.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. The next guy on this list is going to be Jahan Dotson, who's going as the wide receiver 38 right now. I did not realize he was that low. That's significant.
Yeah.
Jahan Dotson as the wide receiver 38 in underdog best ball drafts. Last year, he was 7th in air yards per target. He was 14th in total touchdowns with 7 in 12 games, might I say. He was also 6th in fantasy points per target. He had 2.14 fantasy points per target. So what does that tell us about Jahan Dotson? In his rookie year, with limited opportunity and in limited targets, he made the most of every single target he got from a fantasy perspective. So why is he going as wide receiver 38? I'm not sure, but because of that, we're actually okay with his price. Anybody who watched Jahan Dotson last year knows that he has a special ability of getting open in the end zone in particular. He's playing alongside Terry McLaurin, but you have to have a special skill there to be relevant, and his slippery nature is a really special skill. He's somebody that is finding his way in the end zone, catching a lot of touchdowns. And again, he's on the list of guys that we've been drafting a lot of and we've been cool with. He's being drafted as a wide receiver 4, and he has a random weekly wide receiver 1 to wide receiver 2 upside. And if you think Sam Howell's any good as well, then it could even be more often than you think. So this one's also pretty risky. It depends on really what you think of Terry McLaurin. But personally, I think Dotson showed that he can produce with Terry McLaurin.
Not only that, I think Dotson has a legitimate shot to outproduce Terry McLaurin this season. While Terry McLaurin is, I believe, a true wide receiver 1 from a schematic perspective in the NFL, that can sometimes positively benefit the wide receiver behind him, where Dotson's going to be getting the beneficial matchups there with opposing defenses. They're going to have their number 2 guy on Dotson, and he's a phenomenal route runner. He showed showed that last season as a rookie, like we said. And don't underestimate Bieniemy's ability to exploit defenses and their weaknesses. And he could use Dotson to do that specifically because everyone, like I said, is going to be focused on Terry McLaurin.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. And then the last guy on this list is going to be Kadarius Tony.
yeah, so with Kadarius Tony, I have found that Kadarius Tony is one of the most polarizing fantasy assets going into this season. I don't think anyone can deny. This is why we have him on the Sky is the Limit episode, list. This is why we have him here. When he's healthy, which is a huge if, he produces like a wide receiver one. I mean, he's been statistically the most elusive player in the NFL for the past 2 seasons. However, it's on a tiny sample size because can he play? Can he stay on the field? Beyond that, our reason for acknowledging his upside is really due to his situation. I mean, the biggest benefit to taking Kadarius Tony is that he's on the Chiefs offense. But that also means there's a huge question mark there too. Like we saw last season, Mahomes pretty much told us every week it's going to be a different wide receiver every week. That's part of the reason they're so effective as an offense is you don't know who the ball is going to and when. But he's still getting the ball from Patrick Mahomes, who can, at any week, at any point, give Kadarius Tony upside to produce as a wide receiver one. From 2018 to 2021, Tyreek Hill, who we're not comparing Kadarius Tony. Well, no, we are comparing him to Kadarius Tony from an athletic perspective, but not from an overall production Hall of Fame level perspective. But Tyreek Hill did average 19.2 points per game playing alongside Mahomes and under Andy Reid. He proved this last year to not be Mahomes dependent, but if you put another elusive, talented weapon in that offense, we know what the ceiling and opportunity can be for a guy like Tony in the Chiefs offense. There is a reason the Chiefs last season went out of their way to give up a 3rd-round pick for Kadarius Tony after they lost Tyreek Hill. The Chiefs did struggle at the beginning of the season when Tyreek Hill was gone because they got so used to having that explosive, athletic, speedy, elusive guy. And when they lost him, they really struggled in the first half of the season. When Kadarius Tony was on the field, he kind of brought that element back in on a lower scale. So at wide receiver 39, the price is it's interesting because there's other guys in that range that are going around him, like Jahan Dotson, who we just talked about, just going at wide receiver 38 ahead of him. Personally, I'm taking Dotson over Tony because of the injury concerns alone, because of the fact that the Chiefs have shown that it's going to be a different wide receiver every week. What does that mean in best ball? I guess that's not as much of a knock on Tony in best ball since you know how best ball is. But I mean, what other guys do you think would you consider over Kadarius Tony? I mean, Gabe Davis. I'm taking Gabe Davis over Kadarius Tony.
So I guess what we're trying to say here is Kadarius Tony, we're not okay with this price. Yes, the sky's the limit. He has a really high ceiling. Yeah. We're not buying it.
I'd love him at wide receiver 70.
Well, I mean, even wide receiver like 45 to 48, you're like, yeah, okay, I could see taking
a shot there.
Yeah, but even that range has Zay Flowers, Jamison Williams, Michael Thomas.
Okay, that's a good point.
I'll take all of them. I mean, he has to move down fairly low for me to actually take him.
Yeah. Give me Elijah Moore.
Even Elijah Moore.
Elijah Moore.
I mean, we straight up don't think Kadarius Tony, like, not that he's
could be really
bad,
wrong.
but we just don't really believe in him that much.
Well, and that's why we're acknowledging he has the ceiling. Here's why we're fighting him.
Yeah.
He does.
But really, ultimately, this is you could call this the Price is Right video. How many of these guys do we take despite their upside? Which ones are you willing to take a shot on? Does the reward outweigh the risk? We're saying that for the first 3 guys, for Christian Watson, for Jaylen Waddle, for Jahan Dotson, it does. But for Kadarius Tony, we're not willing to pull the trigger on him consistently in best ball drafts.
Yeah, absolutely. Let us know what was that.
Pulling the trigger.
So cringe.
Oh my gosh. Let us know in the comments who you think also has a high ceiling, especially in fantasy best ball drafts. Do us a huge favor. Make sure you like the video and make sure you are also subscribed to the channel. We've got new fantasy content coming out all the time. Make sure you head over to flockfantasy.com/domain. When you use code domain, you get 30% off. You get our rankings, our articles, databases. You get access to the Discord. You get access to the Discord. I've lost my place now. If you choose the Mother Flocker tier, we'll give you a team review video of your fantasy team, and you'll be able to get in a listener league with us as well. So, as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you later.